In the last video, we took everything that we had and we made a one-frame website with it. So with only one frame in our main timeline, we're able to create a website where we can navigate to different pages. However, the way we have it set up now is good for what it is. However, if we wanted to go a little bit further with this current setup leaves it a little bit inflexible. For example, let's say that, let's go ahead and test our movie here. Let's say that when we clicked on the About Us page, we not only wanted the About Us page to fade in, but let's say that before that faded in, we wanted the home page to fade out. Right now, you'll notice when we click on the About Us page, the home page just suddenly disappears and the About Us page fades in. What if we want the home page to fade out first? Well, if we're working in the timeline, it's somewhat doable, but it's a little bit of a pain to get that to work. If we can change all of our animations to Actionscript animations instead of motion tweens, then we can make this a little bit more flexible than we currently have it. So let's do that. We're going to basically start from scratch. We're going to keep all of our library items. For example, if we go to our library, we see that we have a movie clip for the About Us page, a movie clip for the Contact page. We're going to use these movie clips. And what we're going to do is we're going to attach them to the stage using Actionscript. That way we can control when it fades in and when it fades out according to what we type in our Actionscript instead of having to rely on the clunky timeline. So what we're going to do here is in our content layer, this is where we have our main movie clip with all the animations in it. We're just going to click on that movie clip and hit delete to get rid of it. We're no longer going to deal with that movie clip at all. We're just going to deal with all of these separate movie clips. Okay. Now our content movie clip is the one that has all the animations in it. So what we can do is we can just click on that and then click on the trash can icon down here. We don't need that movie clip anymore. Okay. So now what we want to do is we want to drag all of these other movie clips onto the stage in Actionscript when the time is appropriate. So we're going to start by making the home page fade in by default. Now, in order to attach these to the stage using Actionscript, we first need to export each of these movie clips for Actionscript. And the way we can do that is we can right-click on the movie clip, we can go down to Linkage, and then we have an option for exporting for Actionscript. Now, let me point out, you can also get to these options by right-clicking and going to Properties as well. And then down here in the linkage section, we have export for Actionscript. So we're going to check that. And you'll notice that export in first frame is automatically checked, and we're going to leave that alone. And then it asks you for a class name. Now we're not going to get into a deep discussion of classes in this video series. If you want to learn more about classes and things like that, you might want to check out our Introduction to Actionscript 3 video series. But basically what this name, or what we're going to use this name for, is this is the name we're going to use when we want to attach the movie clip to the stage. This is the name we're going to use in Actionscript. So you can change this to something else if you want. We could just change this to About. I'm going to go ahead and leave it at Page About. Okay, so again, we're going to check Export for Actionscript, check Export in First Frame, and then make sure that you know what this class name is here, because we're going to have to use that name in our Actionscript. So once we've done all that, we'll just click on OK. It's going to say a definition for this class right here, this Page About, could not be found in the class path. Basically what that's saying is it's not seeing any Actionscript files that define what this Page About class is. And that's okay, we don't need one. Our Page About class is simply defined by this movie clip in our library. So it's saying so a class will automatically be generated in the Swift file upon export. That's fine, just click on OK. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing for the other three. Now it's important to point out that you can also edit these linkage properties whenever you first create a movie clip. For example, if we just draw a square on the stage here, highlight the square, hit F8 to convert it to a symbol, by default you just have these basic options here, but if you click on Advanced, then you have these linkage options and you can edit them there when you create the movie clip as well. Let's click on Cancel and let's get rid of this square, and let's edit our linkage properties for our other three movie clips. So we'll right click on the page Contact, click on Linkage, check Export for Actionscript, and then take note of the class name. Click on OK. OK again. Okay, right-click on Page Home, Linkage, Export for Actionscript, take note of the class name, click on OK. And all of these class names are the same as the actual movie clip names, so it's going to be pretty easy to remember. Okay, so now that we've exported each one of these for Actionscript, we can actually attach these to the stage using Actionscript. Okay, so let's close our library here, and we don't need the content layer anymore. We'll just delete that. And in our actions layer, we can click on frame 1 for the actions layer and hit F9 or Option F9 on the Mac to open up your actions. Okay, so we have all of our event listeners for our buttons, but when we click on the buttons, they're doing different things here. And so we're going to delete all of these functions, and we'll just come back and deal with those later. Okay, but what we want to do when our site first loads is we want to go ahead and load the home page, the home movie clip. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to create a new variable by typing var, and we can just call it, space, we can call it home. Okay, now this is going to be an instance of that page home class that we talked about a minute ago. And the class name is page home. And so if we want to strict type this variable, we're going to type home : page home. Now the capitalization here is very important. When we exported that class, it had a lowercase p and a capital H in home, so we need to leave it like that. And then we're going to set this equal to a new instance of page home. Open and close parentheses, semicolon to end your statement. So this page home class name here, again, is the name that we saw whenever we edited the linkage property for our page home movie clip. In other words, if we right-click on page home, go up to linkage, it's this name right here, page home. Okay. So we're creating a new instance of that. In other words, we're just going to create a new page home movie clip and stick it on the stage. But first we're going to create it and store it in a variable called home. Okay, so once we've stored it in that variable, we want it to be invisible by default because we want it to fade in, remember? So what we're going to do on the next line is we're going to say home dot alpha. Alpha is the opacity or transparency. We're just going to set that equal to 0 so that it's completely invisible. We won't be able to see it at all. Then what we're going to do is we're going to tell it where we want it to be placed on the stage. So we need to edit the X and Y coordinates. So what we need to do here is let's temporarily close our actions and let's just draw a square. We need a temporary layer here, so we'll create a new layer, draw a square where we want the top left corner of our movie clip to be, and then we'll just select that and nudge it around until we get it where we want it. Let's say we want it there. We'll look down here at our X and Y coordinates, and we might even round them up a little bit. Let's put it at an X coordinate of 20 and a Y coordinate of 60 for a nice round number there. And those are going to be the X and Y coordinates we're going to use. So now that we've figured that out, we can just delete layer 7 here. And our square is now gone. We'll click back on frame 1 for our actions layer, open up our actions, and we're going to set our X and Y coordinates now. So home.x, if you remember, is going to be equal to 20. Home.y is equal to 60. And I just want to remind you, if you're relatively new to Actionscript 3, that the X and Y coordinates, the alpha property, they don't have underscores in front of them like we did in Actionscript 2. In Actionscript 2, we would say home underscore alpha. In Actionscript 3, we don't have that underscore there anymore. So that's just a little reminder for those of you who are new to Actionscript 3. Okay, so we've set our X and Y coordinates. We've set our alpha to 0 so that it's going to be transparent, but it's still not on the stage yet. And the way we add it to the stage is we simply say add child with a capital C, and then inside parentheses, we type in home. Now we could test our movie now, and we still wouldn't see anything, and it looks like we have some errors because of our code up there. So let's get rid of that code. Let's just comment this code out for now. We don't need it just yet. And the reason we got that error is because it's pointing to all of these functions here, on home click, on about click, on contact click, and those functions no longer exist because we deleted them, so it's throwing up errors. So I'm just going to highlight all of that and then click here to apply block comment. There we go. Now all of that code is commented out. It's still there, so we can add it again later when we're ready to, but Flash is just going to ignore it. Okay, so now let's test our movie. And we don't see anything. And the reason for that is we set our alpha to 0, so our movie clip is not going to be visible yet. But our movie clip has been added to the stage. Now I have no real way of proving that to you except to go in here and change our alpha to 1 and then test our movie. And now we can see that our home page is on the stage. So let's set that alpha back to 0. And now what we do once we've added it to the stage is we're going to create a tween that's going to animate this onto the stage. So first we need to import the tween classes. So let's come up here to the top. So we're going to import Flash, fl.transitions.tween with a capital T. Now, in order to use that tween class, we also need to import the easing classes. So import fl.transitions.easing.star. And that .star will basically import all of the easing classes within this easing folder. Okay, so now we can create our tween. So let's skip a couple lines down here at the bottom, and let's create a variable to store our home tween, and let's just call it myTween, tween with a capital T, just to tell Flash what kind of variable this is going to be. It's going to store a tween, and we'll set this equal to a new tween. Now, if you've never used the tween class before, be prepared. There's a lot of things we need to put inside the parentheses here. The first thing we need to put here is the object that we're tweening. And the object that we're tweening is going to be this home movie clip that we just created. So we called it home. We'll type in home there, comma. The next thing we need is the property that's being tweened. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to tween the alpha property. We want it to fade from transparent to fully opaque so we can see it. And you'll notice right here in our pop-up code hint, it says property : string. That means this needs to be in the form of a string. So we can't just type alpha here, because that's not really considered a string. Instead, we need to put alpha inside quotation marks, like so. Okay, so once we close our quotation marks, we'll type comma. The next thing we need is the easing function we want to use. So there's a easing class called strong. Let's do strong.ease out. Okay, and you'll notice it puts an opening parenthesis there for us if we use the code hints. We don't need that parentheses at all. So we're just going to do strong.ease out, comma. The next thing we need is the starting and ending value of the property that we're tweening. So we're going to start off at 0, comma, and we're going to end up at 1. Now that's another new thing to Actionscript 3. In Actionscript 2, if you've dealt with the alpha property before, the alpha property went from 0 to 100. In Actionscript 3, it just goes from 0 to 1, 1 being fully visible. Okay, so we have the beginning and ending value of our alpha, comma, and then we need two variables here, or two more values that are going to tell us how long we want this to take. The first value is going to be a number, and the second value is a true-false Boolean value called use seconds. If you type true, then the number that we type in here is going to be in seconds. If we type false, then the number that we type in is going to be in frames. Well, let's say we just want it to take up 1 second. So we'll type 1, comma, true. And then we'll close our parenthesis and put a semicolon at the end. Now this true is telling us that this number right here is in seconds. So it's going to take 1 second for this tween to finish animating. Okay, so let's see if that works. Control Enter to test. And it does fade in. It fades in awfully quickly, so we can hardly see it. We might, for a second, extend this out to about 3 seconds, just so we can see it a little better. Control Enter to test, and it takes a little bit longer to fade in. But I'm going to go ahead and set this back to 1. We want this to be pretty quick. So we've gotten the home page to fade in. In the next video, we'll talk about how we can add code for our other buttons that's going to cause our home page to fade out and something else to fade in. So, File, Save As, and we'll call this AS Transitions for Actionscript Transitions. So AS Transitions 01, since we'll have multiple versions of this. So we'll save that in the project files folder, and we'll move on with the next video.